Hey everyone, this is Ben Atkinson, and this is our interview series, Inspiring Leadership. And this week it's entitled, You Don't Have to Be an A-hole to Be Successful. And with us as always is Jonathan Bowman-Perks to introduce our guest. Jonathan, over to you.
Thanks, Ben. And I brought a glass of wine today because I'm so looking forward to this session with Philippa. We're very lucky to have Philippa Snare. Philippa is the Senior Vice President for EMEA at the Trade Desk, and she's going to tell us about the Trade Desk and the amazing work that they do. But I've known Philippa for some years, and she was very successful in Facebook, where she was the director for EMEA, the global marketing group, but also stood in as the global CMO as well. At Microsoft, she was the UK CMO, and she's got amazing experiences before that. But I picked up her LinkedIn post about herself, and I find Philippa has always been very clear about what she stands for, what she doesn't. And here, I just want to read this to you. Her goal, to become one of the most professional, well-respected and renowned people in the digital and the tech industry, known for being fair, effective, efficient, and knowledgeable. I love being British, and I want to make the UK the best place to work and show how diverse teams are the future of a healthy work environment. I've often found that to be utterly how she stands. To further my success and influence in a challenging and dynamic environment, has to be forward-thinking, has to be about digital advancement, and has to be about people and customers. And my style, I love learning, I love people, and I love leading. Over time, I now know more about what I'm good at and what I need others to help me with. I respect people, treat them like I'd like to be treated, and encourage and support a healthy working and fun environment for me and my teams to work in. Because I have a positive and balanced outlook, people achieve great things, and in the process, I get to work with happy, motivated, and highly engaging people. She's a proud member of WACL, which you'll hear about in a minute. She's a NED at Redgate Software, and she's a professor at Coventry University as an advisor to the board. Philippa, lovely having you on the series.
Thank you.
Well, it's so good having you here. So to tell us about, I'm really excited about the Trade Desk and what it does and why it can be different from the other two options that people have got for digital marketing. But tell us about the current role and your career journey into leadership, really.
Okay, well, the Trade Desk is an incredible company, and it's probably a hidden gem. It's not a consumer-facing platform, but it is a place that you can, as a marketeer, buy advertising over the open internet. And what I mean by the open internet is any other website or app or place you go to consume data and content or great publishing or journalism, other than like the walled gardens like Google and Facebook. So if you're a consumer, you spend a fairly small percentage of your time on those two properties, and you spend a lot of your time on the rest of the internet. And if you're a marketeer and you want to connect to that consumer and reach them, you can either go onto those walled gardens and pay for advertising that only happens in their environment, or you can go onto the Trade Desk and you can use the Trade Desk to reach the rest of the internet. So it's actually got a higher reach and a higher success rate in targeting bigger sets of audiences for your brands. And it's a very, very effective platform to create like data-driven marketing. So much more targeted, much more open, much more transparent.
Yeah, and open and transparency seem to be the thing. As we were chatting to you worked you were very attractive, having worked for great firms like Microsoft and Facebook, who are really good. There was something special, and I love that quote about if you'd take someone on or you wouldn't hire them. Go on, tell us what the quote was, and the culture that they have about the people they'll hire and the people they won't.
Well, I mean, I think hopefully all companies feel like this, but there's a definite strong theme that I'd rather have a hole than an arsehole. So the Trade Desk are very careful about who they hire, and they're very protective over their culture and making sure that we have really great people that are going to treat everyone with the respect that they like to be treated with, and it's a very respectful environment. And I think it's unusual to get to a certain size where you can still hold those values dear, and certainly in my previous employers, you get to a certain size and then slowly that bar seems to lower whereas I haven't found that in the trade desk. So it's awesome.
Fantastic.
Is there anything particular they do to keep that bar? It's probably quite a difficult thing to do after a certain size, isn't it?
I mean, it's a bit of a cliche, but they definitely hire people that believe in the purpose rather than just the product. The product's amazing, but the purpose behind what the trade desk is trying to do, which is, to try and to help people understand that if you want to still have access to the best quality journalism and best quality content, you want to still go to your favorite websites, and you don't want to pay for it, then the deal is that you accept advertising, but that advertising doesn't need to be poor advertising. That means that it's still it can be good quality, relevant, important information that you're ready to receive, and it's useful. It's additive to your kind of web experience, and believing in that that advertising doesn't have to be cheap, nasty, and it can be really useful to people, and it can be infotainment and additive to their lives. That's kind of what's brought everyone together.
So it'd be nice to really know a little bit more about you and your actual sort of career journey into leadership, because like Jonathan says, you've come through some really impressive roles, really impressive companies. How did you do that? How did you get into leadership? Well,
I think everyone says this, but I have been very lucky and very fortunate. I was very keen when I was younger to be a journalist, and then I was told at university that I didn't really have a negative or a cynical side to me, and so like the best I was ever going to do was and finally on the 6 o'clock news, Duck was saved by a cat who got stuck on a tree, and I just thought, I wanted to be Kate Adie. I didn't want to be that. So that led me down a route of looking at different kinds of communication skills, which led me to kind of marketing as a thing. And then I was in that era where the internet was like just starting to become kind of interesting, but it wasn't mainstream. And I wrote my dissertation. I taught myself HTML, and I wrote my dissertation online. And then I got some pretty harsh feedback from my university time, who I am now, gratefully working with as an advisor to the board. But at the time, it was like, this isn't normal to. This is highly unconventional to hand in your dissertation as an HTML website. So I didn't get a good grade. And so then that set me off on a journey on, I reckon the internet's going to be more than you think. So I started kind of proving my lecturer wrong, and I don't think I've stopped. So I was really lucky. I started building. I was with a young team that started building a .com, one of the first .coms that really kind of made a difference. Free Pages, which launched as Scoot, and then I went to Microsoft, and they were just building MSN, and they were like, we need somebody with internet experience, and there wasn't that many people with internet experience. So I was looking behind me going, who's that then? It's like, I guess I've got one. And we bought Hotmail, we rebranded that, we launched that as a web email service. We then built Internet Explorer. Sorry, not Internet Explorer. We then built Instant Messenger. And we used the community on the internet, which was still like the the forefront of the adopters. So like early adopters of new technology are very passionate, and they think it's theirs. So we made them feel that like Instant Messenger was theirs. So they designed a lot of the icons, they designed a lot of the emojis, and we got millions of people to use Instant Messenger. And out of that, I think I learned a lot, because in those days, like, you know, a company could grow really quickly, and then you had to do the opposite. And like, if you were going to get ready for sale, which is what we did with the Scoot, we had to let a lot of people go as well. And I was young, so I learned a lot about how to treat people and how to do it well. And I made sure that it wasn't about letting people go. It was about helping people find the next journey. And that was the outcome, not the letting them go. And so those types of experience, I guess they do say that internet years are a bit like dog years. And so I got a lot of like experience in a very short period of time of like how to treat people, why strategy is so important for direction, and like why people like clarity and purpose and clarity and what's expected of them, and that kind of led me well into, then people started naturally coming to me and asking questions, and got me interested in what does it mean to be a leader of people, and I started quite young in leading teams and building teams, and at the time there were like people that were a lot more experienced than me, so you learn a lot from that. And I've always believed that if I hire people that are willing, like that I'm willing to work for, and vice versa, then you're going to learn more. So I've always hired people who I think are far more qualified than I am, and hopefully I can add value to their journey, and that becomes a two-way thing. So I think I had an amazing career in Microsoft, mainly because they help you develop a lot about understanding yourself. So while we were building something that, you know, was taking off in the market at the same time, we also had a lot of investment put in ourselves for how to learn about who we are as people, who we are as managers, who we are as leaders. And then working, I think, across countries and across borders really helps your humility. It like helps you be more sensitive. It helps you read social cues better. Even when you don't speak the language, you can start reading the body language much better. And so like kind of traveling and working in different countries and learning the different cultural sensitivities around introducing consumer facing like apps and web services. It's an anthropological journey. So if you're interested in that, which I always have been, I learned so much, and I continue to learn so much by really just connecting with people and understanding how to make things that are useful for people. And I think what I've learned, I didn't know this at the time, but what I've learned over time is that I really truly believe that technology, it can bring the opposite, but I think technology is a big bringer of progress. It really helps people and it helps communities. And if it's used in the right way, it can have a phenomenally positive impact on the world.
Yeah, great power for good or evil. That's such a journey and such a fast track of experience. What's the sort of one piece of advice you wish you had when you were just like starting out?
Actually, one of my old bosses said it to me right at the right time, and I was sitting down with him and talking about what's next and how we were going to get to the next wave of growth, and he said something about, why are you driving so fast? And I was like, oh, that's really interesting, like because there was a sense of urgency that everything had to be done now, and I think I'm like that anyway in life as well. Like if you buy a house, I've already kind of partially decorated it. I know where the Christmas tree's going to go. We haven't bought it yet, and like kind of, or anything like that. And it was
or
really
completely rebuilt it.
Or completely rebuilt it, but that was one. And I just think it landed at the right time. A guy called Jeff Sutton, and it was just like, you know what? Yeah, that not everything done well has to be done really fast. And it just made me realize that, the throttle pedal is useful for some instances, but sometimes it's really good to stop and reflect. And I think I wish I'd have learned that earlier when I was trying to just probably push and drive the companies too fast.
Yeah. And one of the great books I've really enjoyed recently is Life is in the Transitions. And people think there's this linear career that goes, now there's some sort of school, university. But if you just talk to any humans, you'll realize it's very linear, very undulating and oscillating. And indeed, sometimes circular. You come back and you, as Little Gidding, the poem says, you come back to the same place and know it for the first time. But it's not linear. And you have some highs and lows in those transition points. And we have transition points every 18 months, they reckon, on average. You've had a whole range of transition points. What do you reckon as you look at those transition points? What have been perhaps some of your darkest moments? And then what have been some of your proudest moments in those transitions that you've had? And what did you learn from it as a leader?
I've learned, I mean, to your point, I've learned to know when I'm in the journey and try and enjoy the journey rather than the destination more. And being really conscious of that, even though, what's going on at that time might not be the best thing. I think the darkest point that I keep relearning, and I love them and curse them at the same time. My parents taught me a set of values that it took me a while to realize what they were. And then when I found out what they were, I think I found out by when some of them were being challenged. And I didn't know why I was unhappy about either a circumstance at work or where I was working for someone where our values just didn't match. And so how we went about either treating people or like dealing with projects was really different. And it took me ages to realize why, I had a problem, or I wasn't gelling with a particular person, or I didn't like the circumstance I was being put in. And now that I've learnt that, I know exactly what triggers and what my values are that I can't cross. And then it took me another journey of learning to know that was happening and to draw a line on it and say, right, I'm going to walk away from this because I know it's really important to me and I don't want to put myself in that position again. And that took a lot of confidence, because I was the kind of person, and I probably still am, by default, I'm like, okay, what am I doing wrong here? What can I change? Why doesn't this feel right? So I think my darkest moments is when I've had a value clash with somebody that either I've worked with or worked for, and I haven't caught it early enough. And then I think some of my proudest moments, it's normally when I catch up with somebody that either has worked for me or we've worked together, and they've gone off and achieved something that they always shared that they wanted to, but they never thought they could. And then they've come back and said, oh, guess what? So I'm really fortunate. I've got quite a few people who I've worked with that have gone on to amazing jobs and amazing careers. And they've come back to me and said, oh, just by the way, I'm doing this, or this is all thanks to you. And that's when I've felt most proud, because it feels like you have had an impact, even if it's some small way, on somebody else's happiness.
Yeah, and just like Layla Woodington, who we had on series before, she was very influenced and encouraged by you, and thank you for recommending. We've got a quick question from Don McIntyre, and Don is in risk management in business, having been a very successful Army officer. His question here: what were the key learnings and development points, your MBA, other than a formal qualification you took from it, and how have you used it since 2007, Philippa?
Well, my MBA was awesome. I did it at Open University, so it was a correspondence course, and then we got together with a group of people every month. I think they divided it into 4 quadrants, and so there was organizational strategy, there was finance and understanding you're navigating your P&L, there was strategy, and then there was people. And I think I still think like that when I'm trying to fix a problem in a business. I'm like, where does this fit? Because sometimes it feels like it's a people issue, and then it turns out to be actually about an organizational strategy issue or a finance issue. So that quadrant thing really helps. But actually, I think the most important, well, actually, I don't know it's the most, but there was a lot of modules and a lot of theories and and models that I can use that help me think, that help me sort out my thinking. And it's a bit like it's a cheap way of employing McKinsey, because if you've got a lot of models that you're like, okay, I'm trying to think around like a very complex issue and I don't know what the answer is, I look to my like MBA notes and my books and go, is there any model that I can kind of put this in that just helps me sort this out? So I think that's the most useful. I also really like the reading of case studies. It's a bit like law or history. You look back and see what other companies have done in certain circumstances. And I think that's like, right, reading a story that you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's similar. I've seen a similar story that I went through with Microsoft, with Netscape and the browser wars was exactly the same story of what Facebook faced a couple of years ago with the Cambridge Analytica issues. And so I was able to extract the principles of what I'd learnt and how leadership responded to that in Microsoft, and try and advise Facebook on like, hey, this is some war wounds that might be useful.
Very useful. And that's, of course, Ben took a lot from his MBA, and he luckily got it in spite of me being his professor.
Because of you, Jonathan, I did well. Yeah, great question, Don. Thank you very much, and thanks for listening. And anybody that is listening, please do post up questions. It'd be great to get more as we sort of go along. Just sort of jumping ahead to a section we always look at around the habits that have actually made you successful. So we sort of subscribe to the adage that successful people have things they do consistently through their lives, or try to do consistently through their lives, which have made them successful. So we split that into sort of healthy, wealthy, and wise to just sort of get a bit of variety. So how have you sort of stayed healthy during your career? I'm sure you've had some pretty stressful moments, but what's been sort of key to sort of staying healthy mentally and physically?
I think having something outside of work that's as important is really important. I was in a course once with other managers at Microsoft, and we had to introduce ourselves, and I think it was a course, yeah. And I said something about like there's nothing that comes before me and my family. And one of the other managers was like, that's really brave thing to say in work. And I didn't think it was brave at all. I was like, no, like it's just, why would, like, I love you guys to bits, but why would I put you before me and my family? That's crazy. So I think that balance and having something that is the reason why you work, not the other way around, I think is really important. So that I've always found people more interesting as well when they've got some other like side hustle, like whether it's a sport or, you know, an interest, or like kind of a musical talent, or like people who have got other things going on in their lives are just much more interesting to talk to. And my nan used to have a saying that like only boring people get bored. And like, I don't know why, but that really struck me. And so I was like, right, my God, I don't want to be boring. So I've tried to do as many things as possible in my life. And like, you know, the ones that I've really enjoyed, I stick at, and the ones that I haven't enjoyed, I've like, you know, given myself a pat on the back for trying, but I have to beat myself up over not doing it so well. I don't know whether that in school, like, you know, if you're not very good at French, or you're not very good at like playing the clarinet, you're almost like made to feel like a failure. Like you've got to be good at one of these things. And it took me ages to realize that I might not be good at those things, but I can do other stuff. And I'm going to try and get as many experiences as possible until I found the thing that I am good at. It took me a while to find, I tell you. But
so what's been the thing that you've found?
I'm an outdoors person, so I love horse riding. I was never brought up with horses, but when I was 30, someone bought me a horse riding lesson for my birthday, and I absolutely loved it. And then they said, you do know you can afford to pay for yourself now, like, you know, you don't need to worry about your parents not being able to afford to pay for it. And I was like, oh yeah. So horse riding has become a big thing for me, and it's it's a connection with what I think are beautiful, majestic animals. I love diving. I love being under the water. I love exploring new worlds and trying to do good with it as well. I love skiing. I love being in the mountains. I don't think I'm good at it, but I'm all right. And there's a I could list off a dozen things that I love doing, but I try to keep it as balanced as possible, so I'm always out.
Yeah, I love that. My wife has banned me from taking up any more hobbies since I finished the MBA and we got our little baby. She said no more hobbies until this little one's 16. I'll get around that. Anyway, so the next part is looking at wealthy. Obviously, there's lots of people out there who are going to be struggling at the moment. Is there any pieces of advice that you give or you've been given about money that you would like to pass on?
I'm going to come out with another quote from my nan, which makes me sound like kind of a Victorian person, but she always said, like, look after the pennies and the pounds look after themselves. And so I'm not particularly, I mean, I've just listed off some very expensive sports, but I'm super careful about where I put my money, and I'm not particularly frivolous. I'm just as happy at shopping in Lidl as I am in Waitrose. Doesn't really mean much to me. I try to make sure that I balance having enough so that I'm not worried, but giving enough so that I feel like other people are benefiting. So for me, it's not. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to lie on my deathbed at one point and say, "Oh, I'm really glad I've got that big pot of cash sitting there that I've done nothing with." So I want to make sure that whatever I've got, I'm sharing with people that I love, and I guess the other thing is that I have enormous sense of personal responsibility. I don't ever want to be a burden on somebody. I believe that you're kind of brought into this world, like you've just brought in a baby into this world, and you want them to be, loved, and you want to give them the best possible start in life, but you also want them to be independent and able to look after themselves and make their own decisions. And I've taken that independence probably to an extreme level, which must frustrate my parents quite a lot, but I just don't want to be a burden on people. So for me, I don't want to be financially dependent on anyone, and I don't want to be a burden on the state or the government or anything like that either. So I work really hard. But I do it because I want to look after myself.
And finally, a piece of wisdom that you strive to live your life by.
Well, I really like be the change you want to see in others. I'm probably, if I was born in the right era, I'm pretty sure I'd have been a deeds not words woman. And I would have been trying to get the vote. Maybe not in the same way as they did, but I would definitely have stood for that. So I think, actions speak louder than words. And if you walk and show what leadership looks like, then I think others will follow. That's probably what I live my life by. Yeah,
that's a good one. And Philippa, you we chatted on many times, and you've given great input for Lee, my wife's book, the Inspiring Women Leaders book, where she interviewed 200 women like you. What do you reckon, in your opinion, makes an inspiring leader, and what makes an inspiring team, a good inspiring leader and a good inspiring team?
For me, an inspiring leader is someone who knows themselves really well and knows the goods and bad bits of them, because nobody's perfect. I need to follow a vision, because I'm fairly kind of future thinking, as in I look ahead. I have to put time aside to make sure that I do the right reflection time as well. But my natural way of thinking is what's next, and what if. So I get really inspired by leaders who have like really clear visions and can paint pictures for you that you can see what the new world looks like in their heads. So I get really inspired by that. I think inspiring teams for me are ones that everyone is bringing something different, and I think there's a lot of discussion around diversity and inclusion, and I think that brings up certain connotations or like assumptions, and I mean diversity and inclusion in all sorts of ways, like cognitive diversity, economic diversity, social diversity, like all sorts of different elements. And I get most inspired with working in teams and building teams that have real richness in and depth in their different experiences and different aspirations, and then bringing them around some similarities in spirit. So if everyone's got kind of a positive attitude and like they want to help each other and they're good people and they're proactive, then as long as that spirit is there, then that diversity of strength, I think, is a massive benefit, and it's a fun environment to be in.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Yeah.
Lovely. So we've got a nice question from Christopher. I'll just bring it up one second.
Christopher just played. Yeah.
Yeah. So Christopher, sorry, I'll change the view. Your leadership style and focus on recognizing talent and developing your team is refreshing and inspiring. How have HR added value to you and your career, or have they just learned from you? Thank you, Christopher.
And also to give you a bit of background, Christopher's an old friend of mine who was a very successful Army officer, and now he's an HR director in the company. So he's asking from the heart here. And like me, he's dyslexic, hence his spelling. So don't worry about that.
I'm dyslexic too. I think your spelling's brilliant. Well, it's interesting and nice that you suggest that they've learnt from me. I think it depends. I think the answer is it depends, and it's been. I've had a troubled journey with HR. When I was younger, I felt frustrated because I didn't think HR was actually about human resources. It was about human remains. And I didn't necessarily feel like they were trying to support me in what I was doing. Certainly in my early career, when I was letting a lot of people go because we were getting ready to sell the business, my idea was to contact a whole load of recruitment companies and get them to come in and almost like have a milk round so that we could get them into new jobs. And I had lots of trouble getting HR bought into that vision because their primary focus was to get people out as cheaply as possible. And I was in this utopian belief state where it's like, why aren't you helping me with this? This surely is the better way. And it wasn't because they were bad people. It was because they were doing their jobs and I had misunderstood what their jobs were at the time. And then I went through like lots of different types of journeys with HR departments. And I realize now that, depending on the culture and the way that the company's set up, that they can be all sorts of useful resources. And so now I partner with them really closely, and I have to check myself, like what's the outcome and what's the purpose we're driving towards here, and then is it okay, or can we think about things slightly differently, and we can still get to the same outcome, but we might need to do it a different way. So I think I've learned to work with HR in different ways, but I'm human, so sometimes I do slot into that like frustrated period where it's like I really want to make sure that we do the right thing by people and the business, and sometimes I feel like I'm not always in line with how HR works. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I guess if I'm totally and brutally honest, it's been a troubled time.
Yeah, no, it's very good. And Venkat, I see you've asked a good question, which we won't put up yet because we'll all disappear behind the question. Can you just answer it as a single question that we can then post, Venkat? Think about it's good, gives us context, but just ask us a one sentence that can appear at the bottom. And I'll let Ben carry on. Ben, you're on mute.
Yeah, it's a very, very long question. We'd all disappear. Yeah, but yeah, if you post it up again, we'll get that online.
Okay.
Yeah. So just sort of looking at a particular leader that's inspired you, and why.
Yeah, I think like I've worked with loads of really inspiring leaders, and like some of them are names that you've all heard of, and then others aren't. I think if I was going to pick one that is a name that everyone's heard of, it would have to be Bill Gates, because he was very true to his style. He's not a leader that loves the limelight, but he is very kind of a thinking and a nurturing and a caring leader, and he has massive vision, and he isn't shy of saying like when either he's been wrong or the vision needs to change. I also learned a hell of a lot in working with his business management team about how his currency, certainly when I joined Microsoft and he was still active in the business, his currency that he knew was the most precious thing he had was time. And so all he managed was his time, and how much he spent time with customers, and how much he spent time with employees, and how much he spent time with his family. And that was amazing to see how someone operated like that. He knew exactly where he was going to be every single day for a year ahead. It made him able to then understand what compromises he was making if he had to change those commitments. And like how he operates still, I just think is extraordinary. But as I said, like there's just so many leaders that I've learned from. I spoke to Jonathan a while ago about one that I worked with very early in my career called Duncan McKillop, and he was the IT, the chief technology officer for Scoot, and he was just amazing. He had the most incredible skill of simplifying complex issues and then taking the company with him and doing it in a very human way. And I was really inspired by that, because he really taught me that you could be yourself no matter where you're at in the company. And I still take a lot from him.
Yeah. You've been very good in the way you've looked after people. Sorry, Ben, I cut you off. Were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say that I started watching the Bill Gates documentary on Netflix, and just fascinating, just sort of looking at his, it sort of takes it from when he's a kid and growing up, and how intelligent he was as a kid, and how his mother sort of almost had to manage him because he was just so intelligent. He had figured out by 14 that the rules didn't apply to him, and then yeah, it's a really good sort of story. But then the work he's doing with the Gates Foundation now is just phenomenal. Yeah, amazing.
And also he was very inspiring, I found, on the TEDx talk, warning us about a virus that was going to come and the work that was needed, which leads us nicely into we're now at the stage where we're into wave 2 in the UK and in many countries. Some of the scientists that I know say if we don't get this right, this could be bigger than wave 1, particularly being in winter. So what's been the impact of COVID for you personally and in the different organizations you've worked in? Because you were in Facebook and then you've come into the trade desk.
Yeah, I mean, I think personally, like many people, I've spent a lot more time at home, which has been an absolute gift and privilege. Like, I spent much more time with my family. I've also, I was traveling a lot, and so like the time I've been given back by not traveling and not commuting, I've done 5K a day for the last 6 months, and as I said to you earlier, I'm not built for running, but it's really changed my thinking. I've always been an active person, but I've never been like particularly cardio active, and running has really it's the headspace that it gives you and the things that you sort out in your head while you're running is just eye-opening for me. So I've absolutely loved that. I think I've been much more careful and like cognizant about the costs and like, you know, the running of the household and like, you know, groceries and like, am I eating healthily enough and not. In Facebook, like, you know, they provide all the food for you and you kind of get really lazy and don't think about it, and that got me into really bad habits. And I think it's as much as I'm pretty sure like the younger generation like love like going into companies like that where like, you know, it's all free food and all that sort of thing. There's negatives to that as well. Like, you know, it tends to be that you get a bit lazy and you don't eat as healthily as you should. And you probably don't go home early enough and spend as much time with your family as you should either, because you don't, you know, everything's put on for you. So I think that's, from a personal point of view, it's been really beneficial. I've really missed the working environment in an office, and I'm sure lots of people have. I'm one of the lucky ones. I've got, you know, like a house where I can work in one room. Like, admittedly, it's my sitting room, which I tend to avoid in the weekend now. But it, you know, I've got a room to work in, and like my other half works in another room. I know there are people that just don't have that, and like kind of in smaller properties or flats, and they don't have that space, and so it's really difficult for people. I think I'm sad because I think the handshake is probably long gone. I'm not sure that's ever going to come back. And I'm not a handshaker, but I'm definitely a hugger. And that I don't know if that's going to come back at all. And I think I worry. I was with some friends the other night on a Zoom, and we were talking about, you know, the long-term like impacts on society. And I would be really sad if in 3 or 4 generations time nobody really hugs. I think that would be awful. I think there are anthropological impacts that we don't even know about yet that are going to make people really cautious about how they work together and how they show care and consideration for others. And then on a business side, you know, we're doing it today. Like body language, you've only got half body language. You've got people's heads and you've got their shoulders. I joined the trade desk in lockdown. I've got no idea how tall everyone is, or, you know, like kind of, you know, what they really look like. They, you know, someone said to me the other day, "Oh, like, you know, like, are you really short?" And I was like, "Actually, yeah, I am. I'm going to need a cushion when I get in." And so, like, I think there's a whole load of social cues that people are missing. And I've hired. We've been fortunate, and we've been able to hire people during lockdown. And I've hopefully we've got better at onboarding people who have never been in the offices, but they still need to feel the culture. And so we've done that through, you know, fun, social, kind of online experiences. You can do team building online. We did a team on site online last week, where it was from all different countries, but we really got to know each other well. And like the biggest compliment I think I was pleased to get is a couple of the team said I forgot that we weren't in the same room halfway through this, and it was like, that is amazing. And I never thought we'd be there. So I think there's that, you can make up for it, but I just don't know. It's never going to be the same without human interaction and without like feeling people's feelings. So it's been, I think it's been really amazing and really hard for people at the same time. And good leaders recognize that and try and like accelerate the benefits, but then overcome the poor or the less than optimal experiences.
That comes on to the next question, which is how you feel that these changes have actually impacted leadership, and how people are leading now and in the future, sort of get over those sort of hurdles.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know if this is right or wrong, but I have found that sometimes the pace of business in companies is quite relentless, and you might have like half-hour one-to-ones with people, and you have the one-to-one, and you're just straight into like, right, what do we got to talk about? What are the issues? And I've been very cognizant of saying, are you okay? How are you feeling about things? How are you managing at home? Is there anything like, you know, that we can do to make it more comfortable? And I've definitely noticed I've forced a longer period at the beginning to just check in with people and see if they're kind of coping all right. I think team building, as I said, it's just, you've got to do it differently. And I think it can be done. You can do online, like, you know, escape the rooms. You can do like online taco building or cocktail making. And there are things that you can do with, you can do, like, you know, a lot of people have done quizzes with their families and stuff like that. I'm sure everyone, lots of people have had babies during lockdown, and so we've done baby showers in lockdown. And so I think the same way that you're coping with it out of work, you need to bring those kind of principles into work, because people are people. And I think the other thing that we're working through at the moment is like this pressure of, like, some people really want to go back to the offices and really want the kind of social interaction that the offices provided for them. And then some people are really nervous about going back into the offices, especially if they have to get on public transport. And so I think it's a really fine line that the leader has to play as well. I've been very conscious about, even though we've got partially, like, you know, some of our offices are open, it's a much bigger decision about, if I go in, what does that say to people? Is that saying like there's an expectation that you should go in, or is that saying it's okay if you want to go in, but if you don't, that's fine too? And I've been really like spending time thinking about what my behavior and how other leaders' behaviors need to reflect like choice, not just this is one way or another. Like,
yeah, definitely. Yeah, we did a virtual horse racing, like everyone dressed up, and then, like, on one Friday afternoon. So we got pretty involved.
It's great the way to do that. Another group I was with, they had to wear something on their head, which of course you'd think's hats, but one chap put a cat on his head, like curled around. Hilarious. We're talking about crisis and change. What was your top tips for leading in a crisis and change? We've got one crisis which will go on for some years, but there's been many others, and there will be more in the future. If you give a couple of top tips, Philippa?
Yeah, I think human beings tend not to like change, especially if they're on the receiving end of it. So finding ways of making people feel like they're in control of that change, and that they are able to make decisions around it, I think is a very empowering thing. So I've tried my hardest to think about the areas where you can give control back to people, so they feel like they're making decisions, and that they're able to feel like they're in control of like kind of the decisions they're making. Yeah. And I also think people don't like ambiguity. Like, there are people that really thrive under it. I'm a curious one there, like, because I think I actually quite like it. But most people, I don't think, do like ambiguity. And so I feel like, you know, good leaders understand where people are feeling unclear or worried, and try and paint a picture of what the future could look like, and a vision, so that people feel like they've got clarity in their direction. I found that people really like to hold on to that because it helps them navigate where they feel things are ambiguous. So even in times where I know a lot of people at the moment are trying to move. Certainly in New York, there's a lot of people moving out of New York and into the suburbs for obvious reasons. They don't want to be in the centre of the city. Moving normally is a stressful thing anyway. Moving during COVID is like that added stress. So just helping them feel more secure and that work is a place that is predictable, and this is the direction we're going in, and this is what good looks like, and this is what success looks like, just helps people navigate all of the other stuff they're dealing with at the same time.
And you've reminded me, the work of David Rock, a neuroscientist, Dr. David Rock, fits with what you've been saying, that if you want people to think well, when it's stressful, there's the mnemonic scarf like around your neck. So status, so lift their status, reduce yours, make them highlight what they're doing well. C for certainty, as you say, try and reduce the ambiguity and give them some kind of plan, some kind of format of what's going on. A, autonomy, let them get on and do their own thing, stop micromanaging them. R, relatedness, create an environment where they feel that you're a friend rather than a foe. And finally, F for fairness. Make sure things are fair. Humans really hate things when they're unfair. So I think that's quite a mnemonic for people to use in a crisis. Thank you, Philippa. So Ben, it's you. Ben, you're on mute.
Sorry. Yeah, Venkat has come back with a shortened version of his previous question, so we can go to that actually. So Venkat, what is your advice to someone who is young and doesn't know who he really, or what he's really good at, and doesn't know what to do with his career? How can I get myself together and be successful in my career?
You know what? I think the more you can learn about yourself, the better. So, you can go on to Myers-Briggs and Strength Finder, and there's a number of different personality tests you can do, and they all should be a little bit taken with a pinch of salt, because it really makes me giggle. You fill in all these multiple choice questions, and then it comes back, and you're like, that's just like me, and you're surprised that you're the one that's filled in the questions. But it actually just helps you understand what you're like and how to articulate it more clearly. So I would do as many of those as you can as possible. I love this exercise, and I try and do it kind of every 5 or so years, where I take 4 or 5 people that I really respect. They don't have to be my friends, but they know me in a work circumstance, they know me in a social circumstance, they're my family, and I'll ask them a question that provokes them to try and explain what I'm like to them. So I've done it if I was a biscuit, what biscuit would I'd be? If I was a car, what car would I be and why? And just ask them kind of those questions, because what they come back with is like a mirror of they're holding a mirror up against yourself. So I think that's really useful. And then the more you learn about you, then how you apply that to making choices in career. I think most people are daunted by how much choice there is versus how little. And so really pragmatic stuff. Write down all the things you really enjoy doing. What's your ideal day at work? What would you be doing? What would it entail? And then write down all of the things you don't particularly enjoy doing. And then there might be a middle column, which is the compromise. What are the things that you're okay at, or you might be quite good at, but you don't particularly enjoy it? And then what you're looking for is something that really emphasize the things that you enjoy doing and that you're good at, and something that doesn't lay to the strengths that you're not so good at or you don't enjoy. And that helps me figure out how to navigate then looking at different careers, whether I would be better customer facing or not, or whether I'd be good at solution building, or whether I'm actually not very good at solution building, but I'm brilliant at going and project managing something once the solution's been decided. And it just helps you start narrowing down the kinds of roles that you'd look at. They're the things that I've done religiously in my time.
Great wisdom. And Philippa,
I love the biscuit question.
So last couple of questions before we finish on the hour. What would you like your legacy to be, Philippa, in your lifetime rather than in your lunchtime?
I think it's actually something that Jonathan, your wife, said to me once, and she said, "Are you living your life on purpose or not?" And I hadn't thought of the or not, and I was like, God, what does it look like if you're not living your life on purpose? And then I realized like off purpose would be like an accident. So I think I'd like my legacy to be that I'd lived my life on purpose, and I'd brought a little bit of happiness or difference to everyone that I've met and touched.
Brilliant. Love it.
I like that. Yeah, I like that a lot. That has been fantastic talking to you, Philippa. Final question. Just would be great to get a book recommendation, either something that's been formative during your life, or just something you picked up during lockdown, which you'd like to share.
So I wish it was going to be something like hugely like sophisticated that makes me sound like a real bookworm, but it's not. It's my favorite book at the moment, and I keep reading it because I think it's very beautiful, is The Boy, the Mole, the Fox and the Horse, and it's by Charlie McKinsey, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful book, and it's got some wonderful values and sentiments in it that I think every child should be brought up with.
Do you know
just brought a print for my daughter's bedroom?
Yeah,
one of them. Yeah,
it's even more poignant than that. Lee's mother, we had her funeral last Monday, and while she was alive, and she'd been ill for the last 3 years, Lee read her that book.
It's a stunning, stunning book, and yeah, I think it's a little piece of joy that's sitting. You need it.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So, please stay on when we go off air. It's been an absolute joy having you on, and I know people have benefited from it. And Senka, even you've left a legacy for him with the advice. It's been great. Thank you so much for being on the series.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, and thanks everyone for listening. Thanks.